Nightcap. Conversations on the arts and letters. Tonight's guests are Stephen King, perhaps America's best-known writer of horror fiction; George Romero, director of Dawn of the Dead and Creepshow, whose early film Night of the Living Dead has become a cult classic, paving the way for many of the horror movies of the last 2 decades.
Stephen King and George Romero, 2 of the most renowned names in the history of horror, both icons, trendsetters, and innovators in the world of thrills and chills, coming together once again for this lesser-known adaptation of King's 1989 novel, The Dark Half. While this film was by no means a smashing success at the box office or even a fan favorite, it holds up a great deal better than many King adaptations of its era, and the subject of King's story, Thad Beaumont and his terminal twin, George Stark, are connected by a telepathic link that some believe may actually occur between real twins in the real world. Hi there, I'm your host, Mr. Doyle, and this is A Great Undertaking. If you're a fan of Stephen King, George Romero, and obligatory holiday-themed videos whose subject matter may or may not have anything to do with the holidays, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It's the first annual Great Undertaking Dark Half Holiday Slash-tacular. It's just that I have a fairly set schedule at this point in regards to the order of which videos I'm releasing and when, and if I stray from that schedule, it screws up the entire upcoming year that I've already painstakingly laid out for myself. And the release date for this video is Christmas Eve, so I feel obligated to make it some sort of holiday-based video, but today we're going to be talking about the 1993 screen adaptation of The Dark Half, which has nothing to do with Christmas or any relevant topic pertaining to the holiday season. But I'm going to find a way to tie it all together. By the end of this video, I will have hopefully found a way to make The Dark Half a part of Christmas, or Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa, or some other winter season holiday somehow. So yeah, in my last video I discussed the 1989 novel, The Dark Half. I touched on what inspired King to write the story, the origins of psychopomps, and some unusual medical conditions and anomalies. So if you haven't seen that video yet, please check it out after this one, as all of the topics in that video are relevant to the 1993 film as well. And so, having already covered all of those aforementioned topics, I wasn't quite sure that I'd left any meat on the bone for this video, aside from discussing the movie itself. However, I realized there was one topic I hadn't covered from the novel that was relevant to the film as well, and that is the potential for psychic connections between twins. In The Dark Half, Thad Beaumont and his unborn twin, the twin that comes to be the manifestation of George Stark, share a mind link of sorts, and we've all heard the hypothesis that twins are able to read each other's thoughts and communicate with each other telepathically, right? That twins are somehow connected in ways that normal biological siblings aren't. Is there something about gestating in the womb simultaneously that makes them essentially intertwined with one another? Do they share some inherent internal attachment to their sib? Well, before we go down the telepathic twin rabbit hole any further, let's discuss the relationship between King and Romero, the film itself, and how this lesser-praised collaboration between 2 of horror's most celebrated heroes holds up nearly 30 years after its initial release. King and Romero. King and Romero were birds of a feather when considering their influences, interests, careers, reputations, ideologies, and personalities. It's no surprise that the two would end up working together and becoming friends. While Romero's career had begun nearly a decade prior to King's with the release of Night of the Living Dead in 1968, the two simultaneously hit their stride in the 70s with King's publication and subsequent film adaptation of Carrie, as well as Romero's Dawn of the Dead, all being unleashed upon the masses within a 4-year time span. The careers of the two Shockmeisters would continue to grow and expand in tandem, and while Romero's creative output wasn't nearly as prolific as King's, few in the horror genre or any genre are, though, aside from becoming household names, the two maintained their friendship for decades. The two began appearing on talk shows together around the time Creepshow came out in 1982, one of which I used clips from at the start of this video, and I highly recommend checking it out. The show is entitled Nightcaps, and things get a bit adversarial at times with hosts Studs Terkel and Calvin Trillin. Studs Terkel, that's a hell of a name. Anyway, hosts Studs Terkel and Calvin Trillin bring out a bit of sarcasm and light hostility from their guests, as well as an admission from King of doing a whole lot of acid and mescaline that clearly throws the hosts for a loop. Makeup effects legend Tom Savini joins them as well, and he seems less than thrilled to be there. It's an entertaining journey back in time, and I've left a link down below for anyone who would like to check it out. The Dark Half was, of course, not the first time that King and Romero would collaborate on a film. The two titans of terror had worked together on a number of projects prior to the screen adaptation, but unfortunately the two would only manage to work together one more time following The Dark Half and prior to Romero's passing in 2017. While their working relationship began in earnest with the first Creepshow movie, it wasn't the first time the two had actually worked together. In 1981, Romero released a film entitled Night Riders, which is essentially about a traveling motorcycle gang of LARPers who put on jousting shows at medieval themed fairs. I hadn't heard of and have not seen this movie, but apparently King makes a cameo as a character called Hoagie Man, and this was actually his first time ever appearing on screen in a film. This movie has surprisingly high ratings, so I intend to check it out if for no other reason than to look at the motorcycles they used in the film and to catch King's cameo. The following year, 1982, would see the release of Creepshow, King and Romero's now classic campy horror anthology film, which is easily the most well-known of the King-Romero collabs. And while Creepshow is admittedly not among my favorite films from either of them, it is beloved by many fans and is a worthy tribute to the influences that shaped and inspired both King and Romero. Following Creepshow, Romero created and executive produced the anthology series Tales from the Dark Side, a Twilight Zone-style show comprised of short one-off episodes. And in 1984, one of the show's episodes would adapt the short story Word Processor of the Gods, which was one of King's short stories that had been published in Skeleton Crew the previous year. The relationship between King and Romero would continue in 1987 with the Creepshow sequel, Creepshow 2, a movie I personally can't stand but is beloved by many fans of the diabolical duo. That same year, another episode of Tales from the Dark Side entitled Sorry Right Number aired, and for this episode, rather than adapt one of King's short stories, King would write a script that was a new story and was not based on any of his existing publications. 3 years later, in 1990, the Tales from the Dark Side film hit theaters, and as any fan of either King or Romero knows, this is the real Creepshow 3, not this mountainous mound of manatee fecal matter. Directed by regular Romero collaborator John Harrison, the film follows the familiar anthology-style format of Creepshow and features the story The Cat from Hell, which was written by King and adapted for the screen by Romero. That brings us to The Dark Half in 1993, which was directed and written by Romero, and was of course based on King's 1989 novel of the same name. Despite their numerous times working together over the years since meeting, this was unfortunately the first, last, and only time Romero would adapt a feature-length film based on a Stephen King novel. Following The Dark Half, the final time King and Romero would work together was in 2007 when King made a voiceover cameo as a preacher in Romero's found film-style movie, Diary of the Dead. So while it wasn't a true collaboration, King's cameo would be the last King Romero mashup. Romero passed away in 2017, and upon his passing, King tweeted out the following message regarding his friend, partner, and contemporary. King stated, quote, "Sad to hear my favorite collaborator and good old friend, George Romero, has died. George, there will never be another quite like you." Unquote. So, as you can see, the two worked together and became good friends over the course of many years, and that's what the spirit of Christmas is all about. Right? Alright, that's probably not all that Christmassy. We almost got there. Alright, so The Dark Half was the only feature-length film adaptation that Romero did of a King novel. And that is truly unfortunate because it's pretty damn good, which brings us to our next segment, The Dark Half. It's pretty damn good. I have to be honest, I wasn't expecting this movie to be all that enjoyable. Sure, Romero is a legendary director, but not everything he touched turned to gold by any means. And I just keep my expectations low by default when it comes to King screen adaptations. Also, the campy horror of Creepshow was never really my thing, and I suppose I was expecting something closer in tone to that movie, considering the same people who wrote and directed that film wrote and directed this one as well. So, when this movie got it right on so many levels, embracing a dark, serious tone with solid performances, a beautifully spooky score, and almost perfect special effects, I was pleasantly surprised. Actor Timothy Hutton delivers the goods as both Thad Beaumont and his deranged dark half, George Stark. As Beaumont, he delivers the requisite professorial dad vibes, and as the action and mystery escalates, his intensity and seriousness increases exponentially. As Stark, he is intimidating, cruel, and witty. His mannerisms and delivery remind me a bit of Bruce Campbell's Ash from the Evil Dead movies. There's a calm menace and casually violent nature about him that he pulls off effortlessly. Amy Madigan is excellent as Liz Beaumont. Her interactions with Thad, as well as her maternal, motherly qualities, seem natural and real, and her more panicked, fearful moments are believable. Michael Rooker as Alan Pangborn was an excellent casting choice. He's cool as a cucumber, rational, calm, and collected. He embodies the level-headed character of the novel, who is smart and reasonable, yet you know he is not to be fucked with. Honestly, I freaking love Michael Rooker. When it comes to the soundtrack and score, it's an orchestral masterpiece. Somber, melancholic piano passages lead into discordant, airy violins and chiming bells. Full choirs of indistinct voices sneak in for a few haunting measures here and there, while layers of muted horns and hair-raising strings run circles around each other. Walls of wailing percussion, accented brass, and woodwinds ebb and flow, crest and fall, erratically shifting between droning atmospheric ambiance into frantic arpeggiated crescendos. At times when things took on a lighter note, I was reminded of the Edward Scissorhands score. It's simultaneously haunting and beautiful. The score was composed by Christopher Young, who has also composed for The Grudge, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and everyone's favorite superhero movie, Spider-Man 3. It's a fantastic score, really. You can listen to it in its entirety on Spotify, and I've linked it below for anyone interested. As for the special effects, there are some fun practical effects that, like Hutton's characterization of Stark, reminded me of the Evil Dead films, and the makeup work on Hutton when he was Stark is very well done. I genuinely wasn't sure it was the same dude at first. I had to double check the credits. All the throat-slashing, face-punting murder scenes are very well executed. There are some harrowing moments for sure, particularly when Stark is threatening Beaumont's agent. Her panicked screams and acting were very convincing. The Sparrow Flocks are so well done, I'm honestly not sure how they managed it, but right up until the very end, the massive mobs of winged psychopomps look great. Unfortunately, they blow it in the fourth quarter when the Sparrows are spiriting away the remains of George Stark, but it's the only time in the movie that the special effects look dated, or in this case, just plain bad. The movie had a budget of $15 million and bombed hard at the box office, bringing in only $10 million. As far as critical reception, it seems the general consensus was that the movie wasn't bad, but that the premise was too unbelievable and underdeveloped. But 99% of this movie was enjoyable for me. Aside from the poor special effects at the end, I thought everyone involved did great. Romero even played it super close to the original story in his screenplay. And that's a Christmas miracle. That's the holiday-themed tie-in, right? Did I bring it all together yet? Is that good enough to justify the Christmas holiday special stuff? I suppose not. Almost had it. Well, this next segment is the last segment I've got to bring it all home and to make this holiday special work, so let's hope that there is some connection between psychic twins and the holiday season. Bonded at birth. In the dark half, both the novel and the movie, Beaumont and Stark share a telepathic connection. They can sometimes read each other's thoughts, predict each other's next moves, and even cause physical harm to each other from great distances. They share this mind link as a result of Beaumont and his vanishing twin, what eventually becomes George Stark having shared a womb, among other things. And this sort of supposed shared twin telepathy is something that has been widely theorized about, sensationalized, and researched over the course of history. But when it comes to the scientific evidence, the results don't exactly support the supposition that twins can communicate telepathically. You've likely heard stories, or at the very least have seen fictional representations of twin tuition in popular media, which has further enforced the narrative. More recently, twin telepathy challenge videos have been popping up on YouTube and garnering millions upon millions of views, further enforcing and spreading the claim that twins, especially identical twins, have the ability to know what each other are thinking and to sense when their twin is in distress, as if they have both their own consciousness as well as a shared singular one. These videos are, of course, less than scientifically sound and rarely, if ever, hold up to scrutiny. So while it may sound potentially believable or plausible in theory, does the supposed telepathic mind link between twins hold up to the scrutiny of scientific study? There have been a great number of twins who have claimed to have intuited that their sibling was in distress or trouble. In one instance, in 2009, a young girl claimed to have sensed that her twin was in trouble and then found her drowning in the upstairs bathtub following a seizure of some sort. The teen then pulled her twin from the tub and was able to administer CPR to revive her. And a great many of these sorts of stories and anecdotes can be found around the internet these days. In a July 2018 article for the website Refinery29, Nancy Segal, PhD and director of the Twin Studies Center at California State University, stated the following, quote, "It's more likely that twins might show telepathic traits, extrasensory perception, if you want to use the fancy term, like reading each other's feelings and knowing when the other is in trouble just by virtue of being so close, or because of genetically influenced traits that make them so similar in the first place," unquote. Additionally, in a separate article on the website verywellfamily.com, Segal elaborates on what she believes to be the cause of these anecdotal instances of purported twin telepathy. The article states, quote, "While some evidence exists of incidences that can be described as telepathic phenomena, there simply is not any conclusive evidence-based proof at this point that twins have ESP or that twin telepathy exists," unquote. In her book Twin Myth Conceptions, Segal says that anecdotes about twin telepathy are simply a reflection of the loving, caring bond between the two. In cases where twins were raised separately but had similar clothes and tastes when they did meet, the similarities reflect the genetic component of personality and interests. She does concede that if future studies ever show more concrete evidence of a special twin telepathy, she's willing to re-examine her conclusions. So while Segal is willing to admit there may be something there, something yet to be discovered, her studies and exploration of the concept have yet to bear out any substantial evidence of a genuine, shared extrasensory perception between twins. Instead, Segal surmises these links and shared experiences are more likely the result of having such similar genetic makeup and shared life experiences. In yet another article for the website liveabout.com from May of 2019, Segal is quoted as saying, "We do hear of things like this happening between identical twins more often than fraternal, but it isn't telepathy. They're merely coincidences that occur when two people are so much alike in the first place. It's nature and nurture, same heredity, same environment," unquote. So Segal is clearly the go-to expert for these sorts of twin telepathy articles. Nearly every article I found that consisted of anything more than just the modern equivalent of mythic twin folklore included Segal's input. More often than not, though, these articles treat Segal's input as an inconvenience to the sensational nature of what the authors themselves want to conclude. It's almost always presented as, well, this is what the expert PhD scientist says, but who can really know for sure? And I get it. I mean, I imagine everyone has experienced something seemingly inexplicable in their life that goes against all logic and reason. I know I have. But until there is more than anecdotal evidence and coincidental happenstance, I'm going to go ahead and side with Segal on this one. Final thoughts. Shit. I forgot to try to tie in the holiday theme during the last segment. How about, just like telepathic twins, Santa Claus can read your thoughts and can intuit if you're being bad or good. Close enough. The Dark Half is a fun movie that is well done by everyone involved. I'm not sure why it doesn't get more hype as one of the better King adaptations of its era, but I suppose you either have to be a critically acclaimed masterpiece or an utter trash fire disaster to get noticed among the cluttered cavalcade of 90s King adaptations. And Romero is the zombie guy. That's what he's renowned and celebrated for, so it makes sense that this movie isn't the one folks think of when Romero comes to mind. But if you ask me, the movie holds up surprisingly well. You should watch it. So, fan of the channel and constant commenter Raven Fellblade reminded me that there is a PC video game for the Dark Half. So, my next video is going to be about a video game, which is a first for this channel. Full disclosure, I don't play video games and have no idea what the video for this obsolete adventure game is going to be about or how I'm going to approach it. So I guess we'll have to see. Thanks to Raven Fellblade for letting me know about the game, which, considering the format and when it was released, is probably going to suck big old sparrow balls. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks to all my subs and constant commenters for leaving your thoughts in the comments sections of all of my videos. I appreciate your time and your contributions to this channel. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Kwanzaa, Happy New Year. I know there's more holidays, but I can't remember them all. Okay, goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty pleased with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking.